In the West, you might assume this sentence is simply the opening belief of Christianity, but you'd be myopically wrong. This line is not merely the foundation of Christianity, it is the central creation claim of three of the world's great faith traditions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Together they're known as the Abrahamic religions. And today more than half of the human race wakes up each morning beneath that same first sentence. Roughly 54% of humanity bows its head daily to the idea that the universe had a beginning and that it was created intentionally, not by accident, but by design. Yet humanity has never been of one mind about our origin. Across the world, other traditions tell different stories. Ancient Hindu cosmology describes a universe that endlessly expands and contracts in vast cosmic cycles. Taoist traditions speak of the universe as emerging from primordial chaos. Indigenous cultures across the planet tell stories of sky fathers, earth mothers, and worlds born from eggs, oceans, or dreams. Meanwhile, modern agnostics and atheists often turn to another explanation entirely: the Big Bang, an event now believed by most cosmologists to mark the birth of the observable universe nearly 14 billion years ago. But there is something curious here. For most of human history, there was no science. There were no laboratories, no telescopes, no particle accelerators. Eventually, early civilizations slowly developed astronomy, astrology, mathematics. All of these disciplines lived under a single ancient umbrella: philosophy. Philosophy was once the grand container of every human attempt to understand reality. Over centuries, that single discipline split apart. Out of philosophy eventually emerged the sciences: physics, chemistry, biology, astronomy. Today there's over 200 distinct scientific fields studying the structure of the universe. And after all that work, something unexpected has emerged: a pattern. Across the last 200 years of scientific discovery, one idea has appeared again and again by almost every measurable indicator. The universe had a beginning, space had a beginning, time had a beginning, matter itself had a beginning, and strangely enough, the ancient Abrahamic claim that once sounded like pure mythology still seems to be standing on the field. This film is not a sermon, and it's not a rebuttal. It's an exploration. Perhaps you're a person of faith who has been challenged by someone asking you a simple question: why do you believe what you believe? And perhaps your answer has sometimes been less than satisfying. I was raised that way. My parents believed it. My family always did. Or perhaps you're the challenger, the skeptic, the one who gently or not so gently asks believers to justify their faith. Perhaps you have looked at religion and concluded it's merely inherited tradition, an idea passed down like a family recipe. If you find yourself in either of those camps, this film may be for you, but it requires one request at the outset: an open mind. Not an empty mind, not a gullible mind, simply an open one. Because what follows is an examination of a question that has haunted humanity from the beginning. What if the ancient story is not merely mythology? What if it contains clues? What if the relationship between science and faith is not the conflict we imagine, but something far stranger? This film will explore those intersections. It will examine moments where ancient texts and modern discoveries appear to glance at each other across thousands of years. It will present ideas that believers may find affirming, and skeptics may find uncomfortable. But the purpose of this film is not conversion. It will not attempt to recruit you into a religion, nor will it attempt to pull you out of one. Instead, it offers something much simpler: better questions, and perhaps an experiment you can run in your own life, because eventually every human being arrives at the same moment, a quiet one, a moment where we look up into the night sky and ask the only question that has truly ever mattered: what exactly is going on here? So what are we? As humans, I mean. Let's start with the knowns. We are a complicated combination of 30 trillion coordinated cells, each one of us. But here's the kicker. There are 39 trillion microbial cells in your body that are not human. That's right. Your body is comprised of more cells that we identify as not exactly you. Inside every cell, there's a power plant, the mitochondria. It has its own DNA. It's an alien species living in symbiosis with you. Most people are completely unaware of this fact. That means you are a mechanical universe unique unto yourself. Planet Earth has dense forests teeming with life. It has deep sea trenches with bioluminescent creatures that never see the surface. There's meadows, vast fields of over 390,000 species of plants. Now gently, add in 8 million types of creatures, on land, in sea, and above in air. The complexity of life on this planet is far more than the rational mind can contain. Then there's the inner universe of just one human brain. Imagine this one is yours. Neural sparks and connections organized into cohesive thoughts, consciousness, the cascading mess of your mind. You are a consciousness projected into a human body, much like a television signal brought into a screen. You experience the flavor of food, the rush of speed, the warmth of flannel around a campfire. Science requires measurement, but what we are facing is unmeasurable. It's like standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and trying to guess how many teaspoons of dirt it would take to fill it in. How could this enormity of design be? Yet how could what we experience stay together without it? The complexities are confounding yet real. This is where philosophy started. How is reality stitched together? God is light, the source. The energy of the divine powers you moment to moment. You are part of a culture of humans that all have a lens adjoining our realities together. That is the prism. We are all a facet of it. We attempt through art, culture, film, music, literature, and dance to connect our realities. We each reflect as a unique lens this light. I do not believe in God. I know God. Carl Jung said it first. I repeat it today. You may roll your eyes, yet I am conducting this conversation with an acute ability to litigate. In a plane crash, the black box convicts the truth even when the pilot is gone. I choose science, statistics, history, and eyewitness testimony as my evidence. Let's go back, before the Big Bang, to the moments when there was nothing. No then, no when. The time before time. Everything you see, your room, your city, the galaxies, was once compacted into a single point of zero singularity, so physicists tell us. Before science existed, we were told God spoke the universe into existence. It's an astonishingly simple claim, yet it aligns with what modern science reveals further every day. The claim came thousands of years before evidence implicated this as the truth. Everything came from frequency. Everything is frequency, a mass of vibrations that were instantly created. Yet everything persists. The most fundamental understanding of science and religion agree on the origin and the state of reality being based in frequency. We have the laws of physics. Entropy, the idea that things move from order to disorder. Yet life defies entropy. We've never seen inorganic compounds spark to life in a lab. We don't have a clue how to make it happen. We've never created life in a laboratory, yet every one of us was created by two Homo sapiens that did it by drive and happenstance. It seems that every race or creed of human can pair and create life in the womb. It doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter what race your partner is. You can create life. The underpinning codes of life are written in a language, and a language begets a code writer, a language originator. This is an essential discovery of modern genetics and the revelation of the human genome. We have proven to ourselves that DNA is a language, and its arrangement is not randomized, yet conversely, highly organized. The third law of thermodynamics is what reinforces this fact. Entropy brings decay. The organization of your DNA is a violation of that law. Evolution as a whole is a violation of that law on a grand scale. DNA does not write or organize itself in complex and more complex ways over time. We see it shift within species to create specified survival in nature or in breeding, often guided by a human breeder. We do not have any evidence or experimentation that demonstrates entire genus or species changing into others. DNA is simply most related to an alphabetic code. Toss 1 billion Scrabble tiles into the air and you will never get War and Peace. The odds of getting a 52-word intelligent sentence out of all of those tiles in any segment is 10 to the 127th power. That is a 10 with 127 zeros after it. That is how many molecules we assume are in the universe. It's an impossibility. Yet your DNA has millions and millions of perfectly organized sequences. DNA's existence and order mathematically require an intelligent agent to have created it, then written the rules that the system operates within. That requires an outside author. Imagine your computer programming itself. Not possible. Entropy denies the possibility of organization out of chaos. Entropy in the law of physics is the second law. It states that over time, things degrade essentially. Disorder increases, energy spreads out. Hot coffee cools down, ice melts, pyramids crumble. We don't see organization increase. Plant growth is not a violation of that law. In fact, it is a reorganization of resources, yet driven by what appears to be a very sophisticated code in the RNA of the plant. While science can show minor changes, overstress, and conditions for survival, we do not see major leaps of improvement over time. Certainly not without intervention. The things we see even as leaps inside of a species, like corn becoming a more robust plant, or the breeding of superior animal breeds inside a species, are often at the hands of man's thinking and creativity, which echoes the tale of man being made in God's image. We do not see apes breeding more protective dogs or more fruitful yielding plants. Yet there is a core belief, and I use the word belief intentionally in many specialists of varied specific sciences, that the second law of thermodynamics was systemically and broadly violated through evolutionary standards and enough time. There is not a scintilla of evidence to demonstrate this belief, in fact, is true. None. There is a prime mover, a signal, an author. You are not just a collection of cells. You are a response to a call that was made before time began. Perhaps you've been following along and wondering what the distinction is between the prism and the prismic. The prism, similar to the visual metaphor here in this crystal, is the collective of all humans engaged in this dialogue about our Creator, our experience, our faith, our sciences, and ourselves. It is a representation of the actual church. The prism is a broader concept that essentially puts down the dogmatic line items of structured churches without denigrating or arguing against their doctrines. The prism is a collective of people in dialogue and shared belief in the divinity of a creator, period. It is not a building, a strict organization, or a tightly wound theology that demands a relinquishing of one's own intellect. A prismic is an individual pane, just one clear flat surface in a fuller crystal. The prismic is a person, like you or me, connected to the prism, that is asking for light and truth to approach them, pass into them, and share that both inwardly and to the group and outwardly to the world. You can be a Catholic, a Baptist, Jewish, Orthodox, Muslim, or any other and be included in this conversation. The judgment of exclusion is above our pay grade. The truth is immutable, and it will and does reveal itself. There is no conversion, just realization of truth. You may go at any speed you choose. Like the laws of the universe, the truth will still be the same once you arrive. The truth changes you. You do not change the truth. All will be revealed to the ones devoted to the pursuit of God and acceptance of His gift to live in you. It provokes an interesting aspect of surrendering to be filled, just like the prism accepts light. Each of us adds energy to the dialogue. Energy, as we know, is light. Light grows everything and everyone and illuminates the darkness for us and others. So consider yourself invited to participate. You are needed to further the growth of everyone attached to this conversation. You are valuable to the prism and to the light. Was Jesus real? The first question we must address before attempting to define this character, arguably the most influential of humans, is to regard the common question. This is not so much a question of faith to the prismic. It's a question of history, science, and base reality. Is there demonstrable evidence that he lived? The approximate dates of his life were somewhere between 6 BC and 32 AD. He was born in Bethlehem during the reign of King Herod. Yet is that fiction? Consider Alexander the Great. Nobody says he was a made-up fictional character. He is accepted as a historical fact and figure. Yet we have zero clear paper documentation of his life story and history until 350 years after he lived. The earliest complete histories we still have were written 400 to 450 years later. Jesus is historically more real than Alexander by an overwhelmingly larger body of evidence. The evidence of the existence of Jesus, or Yeshua, is far more robust. In at least 8 cases, it was made 10 to 200 years after his death by a variety of non-Christian historians and Roman rulers. Antagonists and enemies do not write chronologies, damnations, or problematic cultural movements of fictional characters. The enemies of Jesus were writing about him and his followers because they were raising hell for Rome right away in mass. Tacitus, Pliny the Younger, Suetonius, Flavius Josephus, Lucian of Samosata, Celsus, Marabar Serapion, and the Babylonian Talmud all provide external historical accounts that validate the existence of Jesus the Christ. Archaeology confirms key figures and settings tied to the gospel timeframe. The Pilate inscription anchors the prefect name in Tacitus and Josephus. The Caiaphas ossuary corroborates the priestly family active in Jesus' trial narratives. Having legions of haters who wished you didn't exist complaining about you is some of the best historical evidence we can pull forward that you did in fact exist. We have evidence through history, archaeology, and political discourse, as well as developed churches from the time immediately following Jesus' life that he was very real. A very real problem to political power dynamics and structures of his era. Individuals of belief and disbelief often cite the miracles of Jesus and their opinions of them. Truth or myth? They're often viewed through the lens of Jesus the do-gooder, working magic to win the favor of audiences, much like a magician at a child's birthday party. That is not what is going on in the Gospels, where 4 authors separately chronicle their versions of these mystical occurrences. The magic of Jesus was God as a man ridiculing the asserted power of man, nature, and governors to their face in real time. These were not wooing fundraisers or conversion events. These were physics-defying provocations that forced the witnesses to confront the reality of man-made power versus the divine ordinance inside this Yahweh standing as a man, Jesus. His miracles exposed their hardness of heart and forced them to confront whether they valued tradition over mercy. Imagine looking a man deep in his eyes as he did this magic. Would you feel reverence or terror? Perhaps this is the face that no Pharisee or Roman leader would convict to execution. Remember, Jesus was convicted by no one of anything and not sentenced to death by any individual. Imagine the doubt of anyone confronted with the prospect of committing God in the flesh to face execution. Yet, as a crowd, all together, they still committed the human sacrifice of Jesus. Raising Lazarus from the dead after 4 days in the tomb was a bold proclamation that he held authority over death itself, directly confronting the religious elite's fear of losing power. The result? The Sanhedrin decided more firmly that he must die. Jesus touched and healed lepers, breaking purity taboos, and deliberately dined with tax collectors and sinners. These miracles weren't magic for show, they were subversive acts of defiance against systems that excluded and condemned people. By touching the untouchable, he rebuked both superstition and elitism. A reasonable prismic perspective, based on historical documentation, will leave you with the awareness that Jesus was the man of the people, not the government, not the church, and not the culture. He gave individuals identity, agency, and power. Non-Christian sources independently attest that Jesus existed, was executed under Pontius Pilate, and had followers who worshipped him and persisted in the decades immediately after. Many claimed witness to his rising from the dead and committed their own lives to their individual executions for that belief. People do not allow themselves to be executed for a lie. Gambling is the art of making correct predictions. When the patterns of consistency become too great and the player is winning too frequently, the house knows the gambler is cheating. Shuffle a deck of cards 6 or 7 times. Can you get the deck to arrange itself in its original order? The truthful statistical answer is you can't. The number associated with this feat is 10 to the 135th power. Math demonstrates it would take more shuffles than there are atoms in the universe for you to see that occurrence become a reality. Every shuffled deck of cards is completely unique from another. The Bible is rife with predictions that have come true to the point of statistical impossibility. These predictions are called prophecy. Hundreds have come true. The basic difference between Jews and Christians is simply the latter believed Jesus was the Messiah foretold in the Tanakh, and Jews are still waiting for that individual to arrive. As a look into the statistical odds of the predictions and their claimed fulfillment, let's start with 13, like a suit of cards in order. Here are 13 prophecies about the coming Messiah, all made at least 600 years prior to the birth of Jesus. We'll arrange them like cards. The suit of diamonds. The ace of diamonds. A virgin will conceive and bear a son. Isaiah 7:14. Odds, now we say 1 in 10,000. Now understand, that's not the odds of having a virgin birth. We think that's impossible. Sane people would say that's an impossibility. But the odds of someone saying that is 1 in 10,000. In a moment, we'll try to resolve these odds. But first, the two of diamonds. This child will be born in Bethlehem. Micah 5:2. The odds of this are 1 in 2,500. There are many towns to choose from. The prophet chose Bethlehem, 1 in 2,500 towns. 3 of diamonds will come from the lineage of David. Jeremiah 23:5. The odds of this are 1 in 1,000. 4 of diamonds will come out of Egypt. Hosea 11:1. God calls his son out of Egypt. The odds are 1 in 5,000. 5 of diamonds. A forerunner prepares the way. Malachi 3:1. A messenger will prepare the way for the Messiah. 1 in 1,000. 6 of diamonds will teach in parables. Psalm 78:2 speaks in parables to reveal truths. The odds, 1 in 1,500. 7 of diamonds, he'll be rejected by his people. Isaiah 53:3. He was despised and rejected, is the prophecy. 1 in 1,000. 8 of diamonds will be betrayed by a friend. Psalm 41:9. Odds 1 in 1,200. 9 of diamonds will be sold for 30 pieces of silver. Zechariah 11, 12, and 13. Valued at 30 silver coins. Odds 1 in 10,000. 10 of diamonds will be silent before accusers. Isaiah 53:7. He did not open his mouth. Odds 1 in 1,000. Jack of diamonds. Pierced hands and feet. Psalms 22:16. They pierced his hands and feet. Odds 1 in 10,000. Queen of diamonds. Cast lots for garments. Psalms 22:18. They cast lots for his clothing. Odds 1 in 2,000. King of diamonds. Buried with the rich. Isaiah 53:9. He made his grave with the rich. Odds 1 in 3,000. Now here we sit with these 13 predictions on playing cards in chronological order. None, by the way, include any mystical predictions of miracles, just frankly strange, pedestrian claims. Those familiar with the story will instantly recognize the next suit, the hearts. The hearts represent the exact fulfillment or the occurrences predicted in the previous suit. 600 years later, 4 separate scribes in 4 radically separate regions of the earth penned the witness accounts known as the 4 Gospels. These are just 13 claims that are validated by each of those authors who at the time of their writings had not spoken to each other in years, nor were in physical contact. So each one of those fulfilled claims has their own set of odds. Just like a traditional deck of cards, you must start to connect the odds together between the suits. Once again, you come up with a staggering number. It is fair and logical to say that this must be proof of complicity or of fiction, but that simply couldn't occur. The next line in that argument is typically, well, everyone knows the book was written by men, rewritten and rearranged and translated many times. This seems like a reasonable scrutiny, yet it becomes problematic on 2 key fronts. First is the next suit, the suit of spades. It's comprised of 13 independent witnesses that do not corroborate each detail of the hearts and diamonds, but does corroborate their validity as a story. You see, the spades are 13 writings accepted into other cultures that directly reflect the existence of Jesus and his disciples within a century or so of his life. They're stories of the followers, disciples, or evangelists. They are written by detractors and enemies, chronicling a very real cultural religious movement spreading through Europe, Africa, and the Roman Empire. This outside source validation does not exist in any other lore known to mankind. It is a rare, if not impossible, eyewitness account of the people who experienced Jesus spreading his gospel firsthand in their communities in an explosive way. Now the second front, which is archaeologically damning for the pushback to the tale, is the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in 1946-48. Essentially what we have here is an original language series of manuscripts that are over 800 scrolls duplicating the words and language of today's modern Bible, Torah, and Tanakh, plus the books of the Bible removed by early 3rd to 11th century religious authorities. These vessels were proven to be sealed in the caves of Qumran in approximately 70 AD when the Romans sacked Jerusalem and Israel ceased to exist for 2,000 years. Yes, this is essentially an original manuscript of the vast majority of the Bible that dates to the time of Jesus himself. Think of it as a frozen photocopy, if you will, that demonstrates the book existed then and now, nearly identical and reproduced for millennia without error, omission, or change. This is, from an evidentiary perspective, fairly conclusive. The book is the same now as the book was then, both in claims and fulfillments. Now finally, the 13 cards in the suit of clubs that come from the Bible and those same Dead Sea Scrolls predict things far in the future that many say have started to come to fruition starting in 1948. The beginnings are the rebirth of Israel, something never before seen, a country restarted in the same land 2,000 years after its erasure. Jerusalem being recaptured within a war that was predicted in Zechariah to occur in under a week. In 1967, the Six-Day War fulfilled this elaborately detailed prediction precisely, Jerusalem being recognized as the capital. The rest of the world recognized Jerusalem as the capital in 2019. Finally, the rise of a previously unknown nation to become New Babylon, a source on earth of all brands, wealth, and marketing for the world, holding a city whom every king of the earth would have in office. That's been fulfilled by the creation of the United States, specifically New York, the founding original capital of the United States. Now, there is no spelling out of the United States' existence in the Bible explicitly, yet there is a fairly extensive list and descriptions that the U.S. easily qualifies for and could be interpreted as fulfilling these. Many scholars have an opinion. One of the core claims of Abrahamic religions is that God existed prior to the universe and currently exists outside the fabric of time, which is a construct He created. Therefore, God exists outside of time, but time exists inside of God's domain. This leads to a larger puzzle. If God exists beyond time, do the prophecies of the Bible describe the future from His perspective? Perhaps they describe the past from His perspective, and thus these prophecies are teasers, much like a movie trailer of a film that's already been completed. Perhaps the plot is more about clues to what happened historically from outside the theater. These are the questions a Prismic asks. These cards reveal many modern events in process and others yet to come, and the odd circumstances these future events are foretold separately by Islam, Christianity, and Jewish faiths. The question is not proof. It is one of probability and odds. The odds escape practical logic, and no other book in man's library compares. It must be looked at and seriously considered. When one multiplies all of the context of this deck, the number that is arrived at is 1 in 10 to the 182nd power. This is much higher than just a regular deck of cards being shuffled, because each is tied to a historical production or fulfillment or fact that actually is documented historically as having occurred. This is not hyperbole. It is statistics, witnesses, and historical archaeology. A novice looking at this would say, well, you just proved that it couldn't have happened. That is not what the math is expressing. In fact, it is exactly the opposite. It is demonstrating the lack of probability of coincidence at all. It's a parallel to say, we flipped a two-sided coin 50,000 times and got heads every time. You'd say the coin was rigged. Unfortunately, for the naysayer to meet that threshold, it would be a conspiracy of literature that would have to take tens of thousands of individuals who mostly never met over the span of 3,500 years in all kinds of geography, languages, and cultures, including enemies of the faith. Then after doing that, somehow a copy of it was all buried in Qumran in 70 AD and subsequently retrieved by Muslim children in 1946 as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Once discovered, these scrolls had been flown to restorative museums and universities around the world who colluded to frame the content as truthful. This is the position of the naysayers in the world that propagate the internet. It is factually not a viable scientific perspective. It's a great dialogue to have, and the deck of cards helps line it out peacefully and clearly. You should ponder the question yourself. Is it all made up? Prediction cards, fulfillment cards, witness cards, future tale cards. They all connect and have an order. You may choose not to believe the math here, but to do that, you have to not believe in math itself. Should you do that, I will honor your choice. Essentially what this proves is that the odds the Bible is a hoax is only 1 against the entire number of atoms in the universe, just like a regular old deck of cards self-arranging through random choice. The math and cross-referencing of the Bible is statistically sound and mind-blowing. This is not hyperbole. It is statistics. Witnesses in historical archaeology and libraries. You may equally choose to believe that Alexander the Great never lived. You can imagine I'm not invited to a lot of dinner parties to discuss this topic. I love the discussion, yet I generally don't cave to old wives' tales, no matter if they come from a partner at a law firm, a diplomat, a movie star, or a preacher. I stick to the known science and historical evidence with the promise of its meaning following. In a quiet corner of the modern world, an unusual experiment took place. At xAI, engineers working with Elon Musk's AI system Grok reportedly ran a simple test. They fed the system the 4 canonical accounts of Jesus' life: the Gospel of Matthew, Gospel of Mark, Gospel of Luke, and Gospel of John. They asked the machine to evaluate them as it would any other historical documents, not devotionally, not theologically, simply as a data set of narratives describing an event and a person. The result startled many observers. Instead of dismissing the text as mythology, the system reportedly concluded that the accounts carry the structural markers historians often associate with authentic testimony: independent perspectives, overlapping details, and narrative elements that would be unlikely inventions for a movement trying to manufacture credibility. In simple terms, the AI treated the Gospels less like legend and more like multiple witness accounts describing the same extraordinary events. What makes that result strange is not that a believer might say, "Believers have said it for 2,000 years." What is unusual is the source. Artificial intelligence has no childhood church memories, no cultural loyalty to Christianity, and no fear of religious controversy. It's simply a machine looking for patterns in texts. And when one of the most advanced pattern recognition systems ever built reads the Gospels and does not immediately dismiss them, it forces an interesting question back onto the table. What exactly are we looking at in those ancient pages? The machine says it's true eyewitness testimony. It's often claimed online and in credible-seeming presentations, especially in modern pulp culture or with skeptics, that Christianity simply borrowed its beliefs and practices from older pagan religions. Critics point to gods like Horus, Mithras, or Dionysus to suggest that elements like the virgin birth, crucifixion, resurrection, or even a December 25th birth date have roots there. First, let's address the December 25th claim. Nowhere in Scripture is Jesus said to be born on that date. The choice of December 25th came centuries later, likely for symbolic or cultural reasons, aligning with Roman festivals like Sol Invictus, or more likely, representing the theological symbolism of light entering darkness near the winter solstice. Next, the virgin birth. Critics say the motif of gods born of virgins predates Christianity. But when we actually examine the sources, these comparisons collapse. The so-called virgin births of mythic figures like Horus or Mithras are either misrepresentations or symbolic rebirths, not literal virgin conceptions. What about resurrection? The resurrection of Jesus is claimed not as a myth, but as an event in time and space. It was witnessed by hundreds, documented within decades, and central to Christian theology. No other ancient resurrection story bears that kind of historical weight. The number 12 appears and repeats often. 12 in Scripture isn't random or mystical. 12 is the number of apostles. It connects to the 12 tribes of Israel. It is a Jewish framework, not a pagan pattern. Christianity is believed to be the fulfillment of ancient Hebrew scriptures written over a span of centuries with dozens of precise prophecies pointing to one man. In short, the accusation of purely stolen lore is not only weak, it's intellectually lazy. It relies on vague similarities, ignores historical context, and fails to appreciate the unique claims of Christianity. When we investigate honestly, not with smug memes, cigars, and glasses of scotch in a staff lounge, we find that the gospel stands, not as a recycled story, but as the most astonishingly consistent narrative ever told. The myths fade, the math stands, and the tomb is still empty for you. Adam versus Jesus. Have you ever had that thought? It's an interesting thought, isn't it? What's the difference between Adam in the Garden of Eden and Jesus of Galilee? Adam was formed, as we're told, from the clay of the earth, and God breathed life into him. He had free will and was filled with the spirit of man. God retained the ability to read Adam's heart, but seems to choose to read his mind or not. The question after the original sin is, where is Eve? Certainly an all-knowing creator knows the answer. So the question is purposeful. Will Adam lie, perhaps? Essentially, our mind is where our free will exists. Can God be aware of the internal of us? Well, yes, because it exists in his container, which is our reality. Yet he does not intervene, perhaps, unless invited into the heart. Jesus, on the other hand, was born of a virgin birth. Was all of Jesus' DNA delivered of God? Is he a manifestation and duplication of God in man form? That seems to be the claim. When he takes this form as Yeshua, as Jesus, God divorces himself of omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence, we're told. He comes just like a man, just like you, but different in this one way. There comes a point where Jesus comes to be baptized by John the Baptist. John is the first to readily identify Jesus as God in human form. This is where we begin to get the proof of intentional lack of omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. Time passes, and John is a constituent of King Herod. He's invited to his court often, and they're friendly. This is a great embarrassment to Herod's wife. On Herod's birthday, a young, beautiful woman named Salome is invited to dance. She executes a dance that is so lavish and so impressive, Herod is smitten, and he offers her anything, any wish in his kingdom that he can give her. He will. Herod's wife sees the opportunity. She corners Salome, and she suggests that he demonstrate his actual power by delivering the head of John the Baptist on a silver platter. The naive young woman complies and makes the request of Herod. John is executed. Word of this reaches Jesus and the disciples at their remote location. Jesus is noted as clearly being absolutely surprised, shocked, hurt, and angered. He had no idea that John the Baptist had been killed. Jesus points his disciples back across the Sea of Galilee and tells them he will join them later. He needs to be alone and meditative. The disciples leave on boats. A vicious storm blows up. This is interpreted as the manifestation of the rage of God. This is the point where we get the intertwining story of Jesus appearing on the sea, approaching the boat, and commanding Peter to walk on water. The miracle is not that Jesus walked on water. The miracle is that Peter did. God took the rage over the execution of John the Baptist and channeled it into a miracle that fully demonstrated to everyone present that not only was Jesus God, but God would live inside of you and let you perform works on his behalf. Peter and us have the potential to be filled with the Holy Spirit and live with the same capabilities. God will work miracles and touch people without you even realizing it through you. You'll even make mistakes after. To God be the glory. There's a very popular sentiment rising in the world that is best summed up by the phrase, "You do you." It's intended as an anthem of peace, tolerance, love, and self-acceptance. Yet that is not how it plays out in the real world. Unfettered tolerance of self is an allowance of accepting all behavior as good, learning, and developmental. That is not correct for a Prismic. In fact, it's destructive. In any culture, there are morals, mores, ethics, and rules. You do you is a recipe for disaster. Yet it is fast becoming the flavor of the day in the world. For a Prismic, the basics of accepted cultural norms are found in two key places, the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule. These are fundamentally the cornerstones of Western law and culture and go deep into the East as well. Most civilizations have these simple rules that not only protect people from each other, they protect us and our reputations from our sporadic impulses. They protect us from us. Beyond that, we have Christians that read Genesis and decide to be vegetarian. We see Jewish and Muslim brothers and sisters refusing to eat pork and a whole host of other dietary laws. Same for our Hindu brothers. Each practiced religion has a host of celebrations, feasts, and holidays that they engage in. We are in no position here to cast stones at the practices of these folks, as a prism's position in the world is to be a facet of light touching others, not lightning firing others. Our mission is to share and sort people with kindness and discernment. We are the fishers of men, not the separatists. All the models Christ gave are models of sharing and sorting, shepherding and fishing, no clubbing and commanding. We avoid inviting in the wolves and the goats. We are shepherds seeking sheep and other shepherds. If you can commit to living inside the rules of the 10 Commandments, the Golden Rule, and have the desire to surrender to your Creator and have compelling discussions about how that's working in your life, hearing how it works in others, and discuss all things science and nature with the wonder of a child, you're probably a Prismic attached to the prism already. Now, what is a Christ? If it never crossed your mind, you're not alone. After asking hundreds of folks this question, few know. The number one consistent answer is king. That's very close. It actually means King of Kings. Imagine there's a meeting at the United Nations, and a guy walks in and starts dictating what every world leader and country does. Well, that would be a Christ. You certainly have now heard the term Antichrist. That is exactly what the world has the potential to deliver now that technology, and surveillance, and social pressures via electronics, the tree of knowledge, are bringing. The Quran has a future tale of Dajjal, the Antichrist as well. It's probably easier for you imagining an individual such as this walking into the United Nations and dictating global policy out of ego, control, and a desire for ruthless domination and praise. In the Abrahamic faiths, this will occur first. A human will attempt to do this. This is completely plausible for all of us to understand, even atheists. Today we hold devices in our hands with a symbolic apple from the Garden of Eden, fresh with a bite out of it. When we are of want, even prideful of knowledge, we ask a corporation that uses the iconography of the simple infinity, called Google, the word for infinite. We ask it our prayers, and the algorithm of man returns the best fitting answer of the day. But is that the truth? This creator certainly has a sense of irony. There is a much ignored principled point in the Christmas story. It's the tale of the three magi, the three wise men that came bearing gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. God apparently is having a communication with three individuals that are astrologers, that are definitely not Christian, definitely not Jews. That speaks well to the fact that God will commune with any man that reaches out to him. The three magi have a first stop, and it's made when they get to Israel and land in the capital, Jerusalem. This sojourn is what alerted King Herod. King Herod, hearing that these men were seeking the infant who would become king of all the Jews, blew a fuse in him. He instantly ordered the death of all infant boys in the area. Shortly after Mary and Joseph were back on the road themselves, headed into Egypt to protect Jesus from a certain death. When people utilized the name Jesus Christ or Yeshua Christos and its derivations, they were referring to God coming as a man to live as one of us, to live perfectly, even with the temptations of the mind, yet filled with the Holy Spirit as a model for how we can live. He, as Christ, was the King, a title over all men. As you dive into the Word, you will eventually see it is a greater script than anything you've ever read, clearly authored in the future by a creator. This begs the question that always comes up, but what version? The Prismic answer? The one you pick up and read. I'm not an authority. You are not an authority. God is the authority. In the pursuit of grounding you with a why is this conversation worth having, I'm compelled to offer one last historical piece of evidence to anchor the story of Jesus. The beginning of the New Testament in the Bible is the point where we move from the ancient world of Adam, Moses, Abraham, and David forward hundreds of years to the time of Jesus of Nazareth. In the realm of this transition, we move from a world where the Jewish culture and faith is centered in Jerusalem to the moment in history right before it is eviscerated and removed from Jerusalem by the Romans who sack it in 70 AD. These books are what were discovered in the 1940s and are famously known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Gospels are the first 4 books of the New Testament and cover the scribed stories of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The actual writing was done in dictation to a writer who wrote down the words. They were all written after the full experience of their personal discovery of Jesus, their life with him, and their witness to his death and resurrection. The 4 Gospels are eyewitness testimony written in 4 different locations by 4 different people. This may feel counterintuitive, yet we know they are truthful because they do not match. If all the stories matched word for word, we'd conclude they were coordinated fiction. Each telling culminates with the death and resurrection of Jesus, demonstrating his power over death and the title of Christ. All of these apostles were all executed for sticking to their story. Each one separately put on trial, murdered in different locations and times unknown to each other. That is historically unprecedented. Not one recanted. As we currently utilize our justice system, if we have 3 or 4 witnesses that tell the exact same story from their unique perspective, we call that evidence and we're compelled to believe it. The 25,000 plus New Testament manuscripts show remarkable consistency over centuries. Minor differences exist, including spelling, word order, small additions, but no core doctrine is altered. The faith itself is that Jesus is the Son of God, crucified and risen. It's shared across all versions, traditions, and denominations. On the cross as he dies, Jesus says, O Father, why hast thou forsaken me?" Now the uneducated will say this is proof of his doubt. Yet the studied will recognize it is actually lyrics to the 22nd Psalm of the Tanakh. He is, in fact, professing to the people witnessing his death to revisit Psalm 22 and read the lyric. Psalm 22 chronicles and foretells the exact methods and means of his torture and execution. It is a prophecy fulfilled through his resurrection. He establishes his authority over all church, state, and humanity, and the sentence of death they levied is, "You cannot kill me," being the point. You cannot kill my children either. Therefore, for not even death has power over him. If Jesus Christ does not rise from the dead, the religion fails. God must conquer death. Surely his authority over church, state, and humanity was a fact, pre-told by the 3 wise men bringing the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, the currencies of church, state, and humanity. The church is the body of the bride of Christ. We are his church. Those of us in pursuit of being filled with the Spirit and devoting our life by surrendering our will to his greater will. It is very odd as a fairly masculine man thinking of myself as a bride, yet really believing. I already live with one foot in the afterlife. Every day I choose to live this way. You and I gathering, which we're doing figuratively and over time and distance through this media, is a convention of communion. This is the church, you and I having this discussion. So my suggestion is we make it a cathedral. For where there are 2 or 3 gathered in my name, there am I among them. This is the part of Jesus' teaching on community, forgiveness, and authority within the church. He promises to be spiritually present whenever believers gather in his name. This is not tied to a building, a ritual, or large number. Just genuine unity under his authority. The Trinity. What is this idea of the Trinity? The Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. My simple metaphor is water. We experience water as vapor, as ice, and as liquid. It's all water, indistinguishable forms, but water nonetheless. God is the external position of God outside of our realm. Jesus is the physical manifestation of God as man in our realm. The Holy Spirit is the bridge of God outside our realm, reaching to us, the individual inside our realm. What about hell? How can a loving God send anyone to hell? My experience has led me to believe that God sends no one to hell. Without Him, we're already going. Sin is defined many times as simply our intentional separation from God. Bad behavior rears its head. God instantly is non-present. God cannot live near sin. He is present until the moment you sin. Then He's out. You have separated with your free will. Satan approached Jesus and attempted to tempt Him to prove He was God. Jesus responds by scoffing at Satan and makes the claim that he will not do as instructed. He doubles down, revealing Satan is in no position to render him king of the earth, as he, Jesus, is God in flesh and already the rightful king. In that moment, Satan realizes Jesus is God in human form. What does he do? He flees. He bolts from the earth in terror. Jesus has a promise for you. It's God's promise to you. It's, should you surrender your life and heart to the Lord and live for Him, He will be your litigator on Judgment Day. He'll keep you safe in the meantime. Jesus shows up in a heavenly court, and He is not only your lawyer, His Father is your judge. Case dismissed. The toughest part of being an atheist, what if God lets him be right? He is not a God that kills, He creates. Yet He is a God that gives. Therefore, if you don't believe in an afterlife or a God, perhaps you get that. Perhaps you get nothing. Imagine yourself in the darkness, in the end, forever. Like General Zog in Superman, in the nothingness, all alone, eternally. Just resonating in your own memories and your own thoughts. I cannot take you on this journey any further. You must look inside and decide whether you have the time and attention to devote to the questions this film raises. My experience is that they're the most important discussions a person can have with themselves. I recommend picking up the book associated with this film so you can go through it and keep notes and work through these questions one by one for yourself. Here's the invitation I want to make to you. Follow these directions and run this experiment for 30 days. Every day, go for a walk for about 30 minutes. Put your earbuds in, but don't turn on any music. Say a prayer. Say it out loud like a lunatic. It will not be the dumbest thing you've ever done. God asks us to pray out loud to Him, to make vibrations as He created the universe in the beginning. Once you said this prayer, once completed, sit down and write a paragraph or two, imagining the voice of God. Imagine it's Friday at 5 in the banquet room in heaven, and all the new arrivals are being introduced, including you. Write down what you think God would say about you, what you would like Him to say about you as you live out the remainder of your life with who you really want to be serving Him. The best version of you for your partner, for your family, for your job, for your friends. Write it out and print it. Put that by the mirror in your bathroom for 30 days. Then make a commitment to live like that character in the movie of your life. Now here's the prayer. I start out by calling His name as it feels like music to me. When we breathe in, our mouth easily makes the sound Yah. When we exhale, way, Yahweh, Yahweh, Yahweh. This is the natural sound of our breathing. Imagine the name of God is the first thing you say as a baby entering this world and the last thing you say upon your exit. Here's the prayer. I surrender my life and my will to you. I ask you to come dwell in my heart and guide me from this moment forward. Please open my eyes to the signs you will no doubt send in the coming days. Let me serve you forevermore. Amen. Welcome to the world of the Prismic. Now, you don't have to memorize that prayer exactly. Get the gist of it. Go for that walk. Talk to God. Should you desire to learn more about being a Prismic, visit the Prismic Foundation website at prismicfoundation.org. Join and instantly receive your invite to register as a conscientious objector to the Universal Digital Identity System and make a stand against receiving the Mark of the Beast system prior to the need. Don't hesitate to make this declaration for you and your family. God promises His loyalty and protection to those who commit to stand against the beast and his system. This stand is available for you to take with us together today. We are a collective of courageous, like-minded servants, shepherds and stewards who simply desire to find and serve God's individual plan for each of us, respect and encourage each other's plans as brothers and sisters under the one universal God, Jehovah, Yahweh, Abba, the great I Am. We hope this presentation opened your eyes, your ears, and your heart to discover there is nothing you need to do to achieve enlightenment. There is no service you could perform that will please God any greater than acknowledging His supreme role in your life and the universe, and choose surrender, trust, faith, and service. Visit prismicfoundation.org at this link and get the free book that this film is based on, and share it with someone you love forever.